be sure to follow me on Instagram. There you can hang out with me and talk to me directly. Man, let me tell y'all something. 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 All right, look here. Look, here's the thing, folks. All right, here's the thing. House of X is done. House of X is finished. And it is legit. Oh, hey, by the way, what is it right now? It's around 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time. So that's 10:30 a.m. Standard Time, or Eastern Standard Time. So we'll say at about 11:30 a.m., give or take time for my editor to edit the video, for it to go up and for you guys to be able to watch it. We'll say 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I will be live on Twitch, twitch.tv/IamRobJefferson. Come hang out. We'll do like a live Q&A while I'm playing Destiny 2. It'll be pretty awesome. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Okay, so I am hyped for the conclusion of House of X. Like okay, obviously Hickman set stuff in place for like Dawn of X, right? And I told people he was gonna, man, let me tell you something. I've been reading the X-Men for 25 years, folks. I know what I'm talking about. I told people this was going to happen, right? I told people this is exactly what's going to happen, that Jonathan Hickman is going to plant the seeds for like Dawn of X, right? It's not just going to end. It's not going to be a self-contained thing. It's like, it's basically like Dark Reign, the Fantastic Four, right? Like if you want to understand Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run, you have to cover the Fantastic Four Dark Reign story. And maybe we should, right? Like maybe we should, but like if you want to understand Hickman's run, you have to cover that, because like that's the beginning of it all. That's how it all starts. So here's the thing, man. Like, okay, so initially this picks up down in like the Citadel, right? Because the big question people have had here is, where is Moira McTaggart, right? Like, where's Moira McTaggart in all of this stuff that we've seen in House of X? Because in all the other alternate realities, all the other lives that she's lived, whatever you want to call them, like she's always been there. Where's she at? We haven't seen her once this entire time. And there's been all these theories floating around. Like I saw theories in the comments section where people were saying that Professor Xavier is actually Moira McTaggart, like, which is a cool theory. It's wrong, but it's a cool theory, all right? Moira McTaggart is there. And here's a crazy thing. This is really kind of like this discussion between Moira and Magneto and Xavier, where they basically say, if we do this, if we start this process, there's no going back here. Like if we do this, if we start this process, there's no going back. There's no unringing this bell, right? Like we'll cross a line that we can't come back from. And Xavier's response is, I understand. Like I get what it is. It's coming. So literally it's the coolest thing in the world. See, this is why I love Jonathan Hickman, right? Because Jonathan Hickman is really, really good at doing these scenarios where like a character who's really powerful will basically go out into the world and just be like, you're all screwed. Like you are all screwed. Dude, I love this. Okay, so you have to understand the X-Men history, right? Like the X-Men have constantly been persecuted, cast off, been manipulated, been screwed over, been left hanging over and over and over and over again, constantly happening in the realm of Marvel Comics, right? Like humanity's always stood idly by and either let them be attacked or actually gone after them themselves, right? The Friends of Humanity, the right? Like all these different groups, the Purifiers and the Marauders of Mr. Sinister, like even the superhero community, like the Avengers and so on, even most of them have just kind of stood by and not really done anything. Cyclops made that point in Avengers versus X-Men, right? You guys remember that conversation between Cyclops and Captain America, and even talking to like Reed Richards, it's kind of like, you guys have willfully stood by and let us be persecuted. You guys have willfully stood by and let these groups come after us and eliminate our kind. And where were you during the events of ES4 Extinction? Where were the Avengers to help rescue us during ES4 Extinction? Where were the Avengers during the events, during the story arc of God Loves, Man Kills? Where were you when we had the Purifiers coming after us, when we had the Right coming after us, and the Friends of Humanity coming after us, and Factor 3 coming after us? Where were you when all this was going on? And so it's so cool, because at this point, humanity's like, we've had enough. Or I'm sorry, mutant kind is like, we've had enough, we're done. So Xavier puts on his helmet, right? Puts on his helmet and addresses the world and says, world, humanity, here's the deal. In the coming days, in the coming months, in the coming period of time, you will learn that we here, mutants on the island of Krakoa, have basically created drugs here that are pharmaceutical fountains of youth, basically, right? They can cure people of most cancers. They can extend your life by 5 years. They can cure most mental illnesses. Now, there was a time when I would have just given you these drugs, because what I wanted was a peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants. What I wanted was for us to be able to bond together. Now keep in mind, the whole of the superhero community and all of humanity is listening to this. He's like, there was a time when all I wanted was peace, but you didn't want that. The superheroes let us die time and time again. You as humanity either came after us or stood by and did nothing. So I'm not giving you anything. I'm not giving you any drugs. You're gonna have to live your life as best you can. If you want them, you have to pay for them. And it's just like, dude, this is legit, because it's Xavier just like sticking that knife in and just being like you could have had the life. You could have had this dream. You could have had things. Like, you could have had the perfect world, but instead you had to be idiots. Instead, you had to be selfish. You had to be vile, and you had to be cruel, and you had to turn your guns on us despite the fact that we'd really done nothing wrong. And so because that, if you want these drugs, if you want to be able to have these things, then there are two forms of payments that come into this. The first is you have to accept that Krakoa is going to be a nation state unto itself, that we're basically going to be autonomous, that we do not answer to any existing government out there aside from the United Nations. We are on par with China and the United States and all these various nations that exist out there that govern themselves, and so long as they don't violate things like the Geneva Conventions, then we're fine. The second is that at birth, the moment they are born, any mutant out there in the world can claim Krakoa as citizenship, which means if your child grows to be 13 years old and and his or her mutant powers manifest, and they're reading online about how the island of Krakoa is a nation state, that they can, at that point in time, say, I want to be a citizen of Krakoa, and leave, and there's nothing their parents can do to stop them. That any mutant anywhere can make that claim, and they are now protected under the laws of Krakoa, that the laws of man no longer affect mutants. It's a crazy thing. Like, if you want these drugs, if you want to be able to improve your life, you have to be able, like, you have to do this. Now, here's the thing, is it's kind of reading between the lines, is because it's sort of like, and if you decide to make a move against us, all hell's gonna break loose. It's one of the coolest things. You know, he's like, from this day forward, mutant kind is governed by mutant laws, not mankind's laws. These are not negotiable terms. There's no sitting down at a table and getting us to basically finagle and change our minds or anything like that. Like, this is basically how this is going to be. We're asking you for a better life, and in return, we will give you the same. Like, that's basically how this is going to work. And it's so like, this is the best part, right? This is the best part right here. He basically says, if you find yourself in a position asking the question, who are we as mutants to make terms like this? We're the future, right? Like, for countless eons, you as human beings have gone to bed and woke up believing the world would be the same, believing the world would be as it always was. That's not true. We are Earth's true inheritors. We are the next step in human evolution. So here's the reality of the world that you live in. While you slept, the world changed. And it's just like, dude, like, it's one of the coolest things. Xavier's not pulling any punches, man. It's crazy. He really feels like Magneto here. It's like, dude, this is awesome, man. Like, this is legit. Here's the other thing too. We end up getting like the Quiet Council of Krakoa, like the full-on council of the 12, basically, albeit we're missing a single person, like a Red King, right? So we get Professor X, Magneto, and Apocalypse. This is gonna be the coolest thing, because here's the, like, man, let me tell you something, dude. Apocalypse, like, once you get to the end of the story, like the end of this issue, Apocalypse, dude, it's just kind of like, okay, Apocalypse, I see you, man. Like, I see what's going on. Like, it's legit. Then you get Mr. Sinister, you get Exodus, and you get Mystique, right? Now, Mr. Sinister is pretty self-explanatory. We have a video explaining him. We don't have a video explaining Exodus. Basically, Exodus is a super powerful telepath and telekinetic, right? Like, he's way up there in terms of his powers. It's nuts what all he can do. But he, like Mr. Sinister, was created by the villain Apocalypse, and of course, Mystique speaks for itself. You got Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost, which I love those choices, because Sebastian Shaw is basically a guy who just turns any kind of energy or attack that's made against him into like physical strength. Not to mention he's got all kinds of fingers in different pies, you know, that he's been involved in over the years, and really has a lot of influence and pull throughout the world. Emma Frost is the exact same way. Storm, Jean Grey, and Nightcrawler. This is a cool choice because this is like the original X-Men basically, or at least not the original, but like the giant size X-Men more or less. So it's a great callback to that. And then of course you've got Cypher, who speaks for Krakoa, and Krakoa being the island they all basically reside on. Now, this actually goes directly into the first meeting of the council, the first meeting of the 12. And it's one of the coolest things, because as this all basically begins to go into discussion, what they end up doing is bringing out their first prisoner, their first act as a council, which is an action of judgment. And the person they end up bringing out is Sabretooth. Now remember, Sabretooth was the one who was sent on a mission by Xavier and all them into the world, and then basically kind of, you know, went forward with his own agenda. And once he was caught up to by Mystique and all them, they brought him back, right? We saw that earlier in the House of X storyline. And so it's crazy, because what you end up basically getting is kind of this debate that begins to run on between all these different guys, this kind of discussion that takes place. And the question is, if we are a nation that believes that it's wrong for humanity to take our lives, then we have to in turn believe the opposite, that it's wrong for us to take the lives of humans. Now, in reality, this is more of a safeguarding thing, right? If humanity begins to come to the belief that Krakoa is really nothing more than a warring nation state, it's one of these places where mutants are gathering forces so they can eventually launch attack against humanity, and there's credible reasonable reason to believe that, well then humans will strike first. It's just the way that it is. But if they kind of uphold this rule that we are a nation that basically we don't attack humans and humans don't attack us, they stay away and we stay away, it creates an uneasy alliance. It still works and it still serves its purpose. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like we can't basically decide, like we can't be the judge, jury, and executioner for a group of people out there who don't follow our laws. But at the same time, are we going to be the kind of people who execute our own mutants? Like, is that the role that we're going to play? Because if we create this place to safeguard the mutant population and then start executing them for crimes that they commit, is that okay? And so basically what they end up doing is kind of sitting down and creating these kind of laws of Krakoa, basically. These laws that they're all going to follow. These laws that they're all going to obey. And so where you end up having this sort of discussion taking place and Sabretooth watching it unfold, Sabretooth begins to come to the realization of the belief that the entire council begins to kill him. From there, it starts getting into a discussion of like, what's really home here, right? I mean, like from Storm's perspective and the way she makes the argument, home really is a matter of possession, right? You know, you possess your home, you own your home, therefore you live inside your home. But because of the fact that Krakoa is inherently a mutant and Krakoa is providing them with a dwelling, a place to live, it's actually Cypher who kind of makes that argument on behalf of Krakoa that technically it would be ownership of a mutant. And so because of that, it kind of begins to beg the question, if Krakoa is going to allow them a place to live, a place of residency of sorts, then can they truly in turn call it something that they own? And if they do, can they treat it like something that they own? That is to say, just treat it however they want to. And the answer to that question is no, that's not the case. And so by virtue of all these discussions that are going on, what they do is create 3 laws, the 3 laws of Krakoa. Make more mutants, which is to say, grow their ranks. Because right now, our numbers are severely limited. So somewhere along the line, humanity is going to make an attack. Humanity is going to strike. And when they do, we need to have a mutant population large enough to be able to withstand such an attack. The second thing is murder no man. Do not murder humanity unless they put us in a situation where we have to, right? So defending our land is just cause to murder a human. Murdering them willy-nilly like Sabretooth did, that's not okay. And then third, respect the sacred land. Respect the land of Krakoa. These are 3 basic and fundamental, but exceedingly important laws, because it's really one of these things where by the grace of Krakoa goes the mutant population, right? They serve at the pleasure of Krakoa. At any point in time, he could just kick them all out or just sink himself and they would have nowhere to live. Whatever the case is, any number of things could happen. He could turn on them. There's a whole bunch of things that could take place. And so it's respect the land of Krakoa. Respect the house in which we're being given residence. That's basically how this whole thing goes down. So then they start asking the question, if one of the sacred laws is we cannot kill any man outside of defense, that is to say, you're basically trying to get away and there's no way for us to get away, meaning they corner us or something like that, or they attack our sacred land, then like, what do we do with Sabretooth? And the response is, well, we can't just kill him. Instead, we are going to exile him. And so what they do is really, really cool here, because the initial response would be, if we're going to exile him, just send him out into space. Just send him out into the world. The problem with this is that if they did that, 1, they'd be basically like sending him to suicide. Somebody somewhere would try to kill him. And 2, while that probably wouldn't work, what he could do is dump all his knowledge about Krakoa and the goings on in mutant society out into the highest bidder, give it to the government, different things like that, and literally become the means by which the entire island of Krakoa would just come crashing down around them. Literally just become the linchpin that gets pulled out and the whole thing comes crashing down. And so what they end up doing is exiling him deep down inside of Krakoa itself. They literally lock him away down inside of this living island. And so it's kind of nuts, because from there, they basically like celebrate their safe haven. They celebrate the place they're in now, right? It's just kind of like, okay, let us go forward from here. And mutants, like all these mutants who arrived here and mutants who are arriving every single day, all these mutants who are showing up here are celebrating this newfound freedom that they have. And it's interesting that Hickman's building it up, because he's building it up in such a way to where they're celebrating freedom. They're celebrating living in a place where they don't have to worry about being persecuted by humanity. And where you have like Xavier and Magneto who are talking with one another and who are basically sort of enjoying this moment and saying, look at this world that we've created. What you've got is Apocalypse watching it all go down. And here is my question. Here's my question, RobCore. Here's what I want to know, because I feel like things are about to pop off. Here's what I want to know. Yes, Apocalypse is on the council. Yes, Apocalypse is there to observe. But is Apocalypse, is he going to step in? When the time comes when humanity shows up on the doorstep of Krakoa and just starts unleashing all kinds of craziness, is Apocalypse going to act? Or will Apocalypse stand down and simply just say, whoever survives this whole thing is worthy? Like, they're worthy of continued existence. Like, those mutants who were there, if you cannot survive and protect your own land, you were never worthy of living in the first place, right? His philosophy of social Darwinism, that's what I want to know. Or is Apocalypse, does he have more nefarious plans? It is legit. I love this story. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comments Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the RobCore. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.